Hello, my name is Jake Jacobson. I've lived in Salmon Arms since 1968. I've been a fire warden with the Ministry of Forests since 1986, and I'm also a lieutenant with the Salmon Arm Fire Department. July 29th, 1998, I was on my deck in Glen Eden, and I saw a lightning strike down in Silver Creek. Because I was a fire warden at the time and on standby, I had my radio on, and within a few minutes, I heard the main office trying to get a hold of one of the fire wardens who was returning from a fire. His name was Eddie Jacobson, but they were having trouble with communications. Right in the Glen Eden area, there's a small black hole for radio, but luckily I was able to get a hold of him on the what they call a simplex frequency. That's radio to radio rather than going through the repeater, and got him to head on up the Fly Hills to check out this fire report. A few hours later, I got a call from the zone office, Salmon Arm Zone, to go up and help Eddie out because some heavy equipment was showing up and the fire was showing irregular and erratic behavior. It took about 45-50 minutes drive from the valley up to the fire, and at that time Eddie had already walked into the fire to check it out, and it turned out that it was in a box, what they call a box canyon, very steep four-sided canyon. The fire was showing very aggressive activity. Even though the air tankers had done 2 or 3 drops already, the fire kept moving. The very first job I had, believe it or not, was to stop heavy equipment from going into the fire. Safety is always our #1 priority, and it was just unsafe for the equipment to go in there or for any crews to go in there because of the fire activity, and we just didn't have a handle on it initially. So we have to reconnoiter the area. We have to find out what's happening with the fire. We have to have escape routes and safe areas to go to before we can send crews in. So like I said, my first job was to keep my foot on the tracks of the bulldozers and the backhoes that showed up. It was a very interesting job. The heavy equipment operators were very anxious to get in there and do something, but we just couldn't let them go in. Again, safety was our #1 priority. By early evening, it was getting dark and we still hadn't had access to the fire. We decided we just have to wait until the morning. It's really difficult to fight fires at night, especially in a situation like that where we don't have good roads and a very aggressive fire. I contacted the zone office and told them I was a bit concerned about the fire activity and the fact that it was right in the middle of Silver Creek and a good chance the evening winds would push it down into the valley. So I requested the ability to stay in Silver Creek overnight and keep an eye on the fire. They said, yes, do that. So I drove down the valley, and just over south of the Silver Creek Bridge, I found a good spot where I could see the fire, and there I sat for the evening, and I applied the rule of thumb. Put my thumb up like that, and the top of the fire was at the top of my thumb, and I said, if the fire gets to the middle of my thumb, I'm calling for an evacuation. Now, the evacuation had already been lined up at the zone office. They had everything in place if we had to call an evacuation. So about every hour or so, I'd put my thumb up and say, oh, okay, well, the fire is still okay. No need for an evacuation. Very little progress downhill. Luckily, we didn't have downhill winds that night. Next morning, everyone was showing up. We had all kinds of crews and equipment, and we were able to aggressively fight the fire. Skipping through the main fire, 3 months later, we get to October. Late September, the fire was pretty well out. We were just in patrol phase, and I had given the responsibility as being the incident commander. No big deal. I had like 2 crews that were just patrolling, driving back and forth, checking and seeing if there were any smoke showing up. Well, October 6th, mid-afternoon, we did see a smoke on the west side of the valley. We went to check it out, and it was a huge yellow pine tree that had been burning inside for who knows how long. It had finally broken off the top, and it was burning like a candle. When we got there, we didn't even have pumps with us. We were just on patrol. We didn't expect to find any fire. Eddie Jacobson, who was one of the original fire wardens who went into the fire, is also a certified dangerous snag faller, was one of the patrol crews. So I called Eddie over and I said, Eddie, it's an ugly tree. It's about 1.5 meters in diameter. The base is burnt out. The top has already fallen off. It's on a steep slope right near a ridge. On the other side of the ridge was a creek. I said, Eddie, can you drop that tree so that it lands upslope near the creek? And of course, Eddie, great confidence, said, of course. And he did. He dropped it exactly where we wanted it. When it was down, I said, Eddie, can you now buck that tree up in small bite-sized pieces? Which he did. And when I sent 2 crew members down the creek, the rest of us rolled these bolts up the hill, over the ridge, and down into the creek. When we got them all down the creek, we all went down there and had a good splash-in party. We extinguished the fire that was burning inside these bolts of tree, rolled the bolts out, cleaned the area up, and went home. And that, folks, was the end of the '98 Silver Creek fire.